Hello, I'm Bakhtiar Sanova and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. At least 10 people dead in mass shooting at school and home in Canada, authorities say. Donald Trump threatens Iran with something very tough if U.S. demands are not met. And UK doubles troops in Norway to counter Russian threat to Arctic. At least 10 people, including the suspect, have been killed after a shooting in a school in the town of Tumbler Ridge in the western province of British Columbia in Canada. Police say the suspected shooter, a woman, was found dead inside the school from a self-inflicted injury. More than 25 people were injured, 2 with serious or life-threatening injuries. Authorities say investigators have identified the shooter, but the suspect's motive remained unclear. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney expressed a shock over a mass shooting and suspended his trip to Europe. Prime Minister of British Columbia David Eby said the government will ensure every possible support for community members in the coming days.
Right now, information is very limited as police do their work, and the RCMP has asked for patience as they work through methodically to ensure that they are supporting families and getting to the bottom of what happened today. Police advise at this point they're still reaching out to families, still reaching out to relatives, next of kin, and so at this point aren't able to share any details about those who have passed away, but I expect that we'll be hearing that information.
Following an invitation by Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Israel's President Isaac Herzog has arrived in the country's capital for a 4-day visit. His visit comes amid protests of Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog arrived in Canberra on Wednesday at the invitation of Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. The 4-day visit follows a deadly shooting at a Hanukkah event at Sydney's Bondi Beach in December last year, in which 15 people were killed. Herzog was given a ceremonial welcome on arrival and is expected to travel to Melbourne later this week. The Israeli president described the trip as emotional and said it presents an opportunity for Australia and Israel to begin a new chapter in their relationship.
This visit has been very emotional. You know, when one Jew is hurt anywhere around the world, we in Israel ache and our heart misses a beat. And that is why it was so important to visit the community and express heartfelt condolences and strengthen the community. It was also an opportunity to bring the relations between our nations on a new beginning and a better future. I think the relations between us do not depend only on the issue of Israel and the Palestinians and the conflict, but has a much broader base, and we should together make sure that it's uplifted to new directions.
However, the visit has sparked protests across the country. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside Australia's Parliament House to voice opposition to Israel's actions in Palestine.
I think it's even less appropriate for him to come here because it's demonstrating his link between the Israeli government and the Australian government. And I think we should be condemning the Israeli government for all that it's done in Gaza and the West Bank.
And I feel very strongly, as to my family, that Israel's representative should not be here at the invitation of our government, considering the outrageous killing that's happened in Palestine and Gaza.
In response, Albanese called for tensions to ease, defending Herzog's visit as important for Jewish Australians in light of the Bondi attack.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to meet U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. today. The talks are set to focus on negotiations with Iran following indirect nuclear discussions between Iranian and U.S. officials held in Muscat last week. Iranian officials have ruled out including the country's missile program in the talks and said Tehran is seeking recognition of its right to enrich uranium. The United States and Iran have begun to enter a new phase in their diplomatic relationship, resuming nuclear talks on Friday after nearly 8 months of suspension. However, President Donald Trump has warned that failure to reach a deal could lead to tough military action.
A second American aircraft carrier strike group could be sent to the Middle East for possible military action against Iran if negotiations fail. That's according to US President Donald Trump on Tuesday. In an interview with Axios, Trump explained that either the US would make a deal with Iran or it would have to take tougher action, similar to last year's 12-day war in June. This threat follows talks between the US and Iran on Tehran's nuclear program last Friday in Oman. However, Trump also said in an interview with Fox on Tuesday that he thinks that Iran wants to make a deal with the US on its nuclear and ballistic missile programs, but reiterated it would be foolish if they did not. Meanwhile, Iran maintains a positive diplomatic stance. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghai says that the nuclear talks had shown enough consensus to continue the diplomatic process.
The Muscat meeting, which was not a long session, was in fact a half-day meeting. From our perspective, it was aimed at assessing the seriousness of the other side and the potential course of the process. Accordingly, this meeting generally focused more on the broader picture.
Meanwhile, Iran's top security official, Ali Larijani, held talks in Oman on Tuesday, days after the first round.
From the beginning, we believe that war does not resolve matters between the two countries, and the regional disputes between Iran and the West must be resolved through dialogue. It was a mistake on the part of others to believe that they could resolve issues through the language of force. This was a negative point and led to many problems in the dialogue. We believe that the many problems in the region must be resolved through dialogue between both sides.
Larijani's visit to Oman comes as Iran and the US prepare for the next round of nuclear negotiations. Tehran has said it has halted enrichment activity since the strikes on facilities last year, and always said its nuclear program is solely for peaceful purposes.
The UK will double the number of British troops deployed to Norway over the next 3 years as Westminster moves to counter what it calls growing Russian threats in the Arctic and the high north. Our correspondent Zainab Farizadeh in the UK has more.
The number of UK armed forces personnel stationed in Norway will rise from around 1,000 to 2,000 in what officials describe as a significant step to strengthen NATO's northern flank. The move comes amid increasing concern among NATO allies about Moscow's military activity in the Arctic, including the reopening of old Cold War bases and an expanding presence across the region. Defense Secretary John Healey will meet NATO counterparts in Brussels on Thursday, where proposals to strengthen Arctic security will be discussed. The government is also backing a new initiative called Arctic Sentry, proposed by Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, designed to boost surveillance and cooperation models on existing NATO missions in the Baltic and Eastern Europe. As part of the expanded presence, around 1,500 Royal Marine Commandos will take part in NATO's exercise called Response in March, training in extreme Arctic conditions across Norway, Finland and Sweden. Later this year, the UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force will carry out another major drill, Line Protector, involving air, land and naval forces from several European countries. That exercise will focus on defending critical infrastructure across Norway, Iceland and the Danish Straits. Concerns have also grown about the risk to undersea cables and pipelines, particularly since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The UK and Norway signed a defence pact last year to protect subsea infrastructure with joint naval operations to track Russian submarines. The Ministry of Defence says there has been a 30% increase in Russian submarine activity in UK waters over the past 2 years, with Northern Atlantic activity now back at a Cold War levels. Officials say boosting the UK's Arctic presence is key to NATO's collective defence and to protecting vital infrastructure across Northern Europe. Zena Farizadeh, A-News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
EU defense ministers are gathering in Brussels to discuss the Russia-Ukraine war on Wednesday after European Parliament approves 90 billion euros of support loan until 2027 for Kiev. Ministers will work towards diplomatic efforts to reach a peace and security agreement. Also invited to the meeting is Ukrainian Minister of Defense Mikhailo Fedorov, who is expected to address issues such as urgent battlefield needs and military assistance for the country. A Russian attack has killed 4 people in a town west of Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv. That's according to the regional governor on Telegram. Strikes have also damaged energy infrastructure and left residents in the Kharkiv region without electricity. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday called for a faster military and local administrative response to ongoing energy disruptions. He expressed dissatisfaction with the pace in certain regions. Zelensky said that while repair crews and emergency services are working effectively, not all communities are resolving infrastructure problems on time.
This is a fundamental issue, and I urge local authorities and all services to constantly verify it. The same approach should apply to other cities and communities. Unfortunately, there are cases where full reports on problems are missing and much time is lost. Today, we reviewed such situations in Kiev, Okhtyrka, and Kryvyi Rih. Every community leader and responsible service must pay real attention to what is happening with buildings, networks, and the implementation of mandatory assistance decisions.
Ukrainian athlete Vladislav Heraskevich has vowed to wear a helmet featuring images of people killed in the war with Russia. This is despite the International Olympic Committee banning the 27-year-old from wearing the headgear at the competition in Milan, which begins on Thursday.
23, I think. Ukrainian skeleton racer Vladislav Heraskevich has said he will wear a helmet showing pictures of athletes killed in the war with Russia, despite the International Olympic Committee, IOC, prohibiting it. The 27-year-old said he would defy the ban and wear his helmet of remembrance at the Winter Olympics in Milan, Italy, which starts on Thursday, February 12th. The headgear commemorates 24 Ukrainian athletes killed in the war, some of whom were his friends. Heraskevich has been wearing the helmet while training in Italy, but the IOC said he would not be able to compete with the helmet in the competition because of a rule banning political statements in the fields of play. It said he could instead wear a black armband in memory of those who have lost their lives. The Olympic Charter says that no political, religious or racial propaganda is permitted in any Olympic sites, including fields of play or podiums. But athletes can express themselves freely elsewhere. Heraskevich said he didn't think his helmet violated IOC rules.
And I may say, I disagree with this decision because I truly believe that we didn't violate any rules. Rule 50. Political propaganda, discriminational propaganda or racial propaganda is definitely not about this helmet.
Sports people featured on the headgear include teenage weightlifter Alina Perehudova, boxer Pavlo Ivchenko, and ice hockey player Oleksiy Loginov, among others.
I truly believe that AFC don't have so much black bands to honor all the athletes who was fallen in this war.
The 27-year-old previously displayed a sign saying, "No war in Ukraine," after a skeleton run at the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics, days before Russia's invasion. At the time, the IOC said that Heraskevich would not face repercussions for displaying the sign, calling it a general call for peace.
French far-right politician Marine Le Pen arrives in court for the final day of her appeal. She's accused of misusing of EU funds and, if successful, may be eligible to stand in the 2027 French presidential election. The far-right politician was found guilty last year of misusing public funds when she hired aides in the EU Parliament between 2004 and 2016. Last month, Le Pen admitted that some people worked for her party while being paid as EU parliamentary aides and called it a mistake. She denies this was on a wider scale. The appeals court's verdict is expected before summer. Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss Europe's strategic autonomy and Macron's call for a stronger global role. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. Woo! That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Etzi Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing Shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Etzi Bar, come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here, that's been cooking. That is amazing.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Welcome back to A News. French President Emmanuel Macron has issued a stark warning to the European Union. It is time for Europe to stop seeing itself as a passive actor and start behaving like a global power. Macron says the bloc faces a wake-up call amid growing geopolitical pressures from China, Russia and the United States, and that Europe must build strategic strength in economics, security and democratic resilience to survive and thrive in a more disorderly world. Speaking ahead of a key EU leaders summit in Brussels, Macron reiterated his call for a common EU borrowing capacity and future-oriented Eurobonds to finance critical investments in defense, clean energy and advanced technologies. He also warned that recent tensions with the United States, including disputes over Greenland, tariffs and technology rules, should be regarded not as isolated incidents, but as part of a long-term challenge to Europe's strategic autonomy and global influence. With us today from Stockholm, Sweden, to unpack these developments is political analyst Grégory Metziu. Grégory, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Mr. Metziu, Macron says Europe must start acting like a power. What exactly does he mean by that? Is it symbolic rhetoric or a realistic strategic shift?
No, Macron is in fact in substance saying that we should be less of a market, an economical market, and more a global power, a geopolitical power. We should have our own industry, we should have our own capabilities, we should have our own supply chains, we should have our own critical minerals, we should have our own defense industry. So there's no problem to say that, but the methodology is foreseeing to achieve that goal is to indeed have a common loan, a Eurobond, and to make it systematic, to make it every year, to loan 1,200 billions on the market to finance those, in his view, needed changes. The problem is not the message, I would say. The message is clear and it is audible. It may be the problem of the messenger, because coming from the president of France, a country which economy is in a difficult situation, they needed no less than 3 governments and 3 prime ministers to establish the budget for this year. The country is having a huge debt, 3,300 billions. So maybe the methodology is not right, but the idea behind the proposal is not criticisable.
So how significant is the timing of Macron's remarks ahead of the EU summit in Brussels?
I would say that that's a typical Emmanuel Macron move. He likes to be first on the scene and to kind of launch the topic, right? So there will be a summit, and it's not the first time he is launching an idea and making an interview ahead of the summit in order to be visible. Mr. Macron in France is a little bit in problems, so the international arena is the place where he can still have a little visibility, and he's willing to occupy that arena for sure. The problem here is when he wants to compare the US and China. If we take an image like we are all on the road and there are two cars in front, China car, US car, right? And then behind it you have a bus with 27 people in the bus and with potentially 3 drivers, because Madame von der Leyen, Mr. Costa and the President of the European Parliament, they all believe that they should drive the car. At the same time, the 27 people behind, they are shouting at the driver, turn left, and some others say, no, turn right, and some say, stop. In addition of the bus, we have 7 cars, the member states around on the same road, that are also pursuing their own goals, and they are defending their own interests. So before we arrive to be a geopolitical power, there is a need of a reform of the governance system in the EU, I believe.
Mr. Mathieu, Macron has framed tensions with the United States, like the Greenland dispute, as part of a broader wake-up call for Europe. Do you see this as realistic or exaggerated?
No, I think it's realistic, and the time has changed. We are not in the same world as before. What was an ally can become a bully, and Mr. Trump has an agenda, America's first, and he would do everything to achieve that agenda. I was referring to a car on the road. It's a kind of a Mad Max car, and the guy is ready to shoot at every obstacle on this road. So I think that we are in a position where it's time for Europe indeed to wake up. And the Greenland dossier was an illustration of the need that we should be more united, and together we are stronger. But what did we do? We sent 50 military guy in the Greenland to make like, okay, don't come. I mean, I'm not sure that it was very, the US was very afraid of that move.
Emmanuel Macron also stresses the need for Europe to invest more in defense and technology. What are the main obstacles to achieving deeper EU cooperation in these areas?
Yes, it's needed. But remember, NATO has always said the same. And Trump told all the aid of NATO pay more to the NATO budget. You should reach the 5%. Now that we are seeing tension with that ally, there is a need for improving European defense, but at the same time, a number of member states are still buying F-35 from the US. When in Europe there is a capacity to produce fighter jet. There are the French Rafale, there are the Swedish Gripen. There is a military and defense industry in Europe. But here it comes to the fact that shall we buy Europe first? Shall we buy made of other products? That's also part of the reflection that should be on the table here.
Some critics argue that European economic fragmentation limits its global power. What structural reforms would you say are most urgent for the EU to become a cohesive global actor?
Before, there are 27 persons in the same bus, and the governance in place, it's a trilogue. So everything needs to be a consensus. Everything needs to be adopted by 27 different states that have different interests sometimes, with the possibility for a veto, and we see that in every possible debate, and with some states like Hungary or Slovakia that have another agenda. It's difficult to reach that consensus. You would remember Henry Kissinger saying, when I have to call Europe, which number is it?
Mr. Mathieu, how likely is it that the euro could become a stronger competitor to the US dollar if Europe follows Macron's strategy?
Euro is a strong money. It's a valid currency, and for example, Bulgaria joined the euro, so now we are more and more using the euro. Even non-member states are using the euro, such as Montenegro, for example. So euro is a strong money, but to compete or to replace the US on the international market, in my opinion, is like a New Year wishful thinking. You know, you say, oh, this year I would like to do that, but you know that it's not possible. But to raise the attraction for euro, it would also need to simplify the market rules, to attract more investors. The Chinese factory that needs to fabricate a product has much less obligation and rules than a European producer. So I think there is a global thinking that needs to be put in place here, because what matters at the end of the day is competitiveness. And for example, the Swedish Prime Minister, about the Macron idea, declared this morning that he was very skeptical and that he would favor more competitiveness, less taxes, than to share the risk, because the Eurobond system is a risk-sharing system. And you are, in fact, asking for a credit card to spend money and maybe ask others to pay the debt. And ultimately, who will pay the debt? Me, my children, and all the European taxpayers.
So, looking ahead, what would you identify as the key risks and opportunities for the EU if it tries to assert itself as a global power in the next decade?
Europe is already a strong power. What it needs, it's more visible leadership. It's, you know, there are international discussion on a number of topics right now. Peace in Ukraine, the Iran situation. Can you name me a European that is at the table? There is no. So that's the problem we have right now. We have a problem of positioning. We are not taking place in discussion at the global level, and we are spending time to discuss between ourselves what could be the common position. And once we have decided a very weak common position, then we have nobody to go and represent it at the international arena. That's, I think, the main problem for Europe and the main risk. If it doesn't reform itself and its governance, well, it will not be heard.
Grégory Mathieu, thank you very much for your expert analysis and for joining us. We truly appreciate your insights. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Now, after the break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Welcome back to A News. Now, let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Georgia has confirmed it will take part in the 2026 Munich Security Conference after not participating in last year's gathering. The decision comes at a time of strained transatlantic relations and ongoing debate about Georgia's democratic trajectory. What does this return to Munich signal? A reset with the West or simply routine diplomacy? Here are the details from our correspondent Nini Nikolaishvili.
Georgia's government has confirmed that it will participate in the 2026 Munich Security Conference, with the Prime Minister Irakli Qabaqidze stating that the invitation has been accepted and that the country will be represented, possibly by Foreign Minister Makab Bajarishvili. The Prime Minister himself will not attend. The announcement follows a notable absence in 2025 when the government administration confirmed that Georgia did not participate in the Munich Security Conference. The administration did not clarify at the time whether an official invitation had been extended or not. Despite the government's absence, the 2025 conference prominently featured Georgia. Former President Salome Zurabishvili and opposition leader George Gahari addressed concerns over democratic backsliding, alleged Russian hybrid influence, and the need for new, free elections. They also held high-level meetings with European and US representatives. The Munich Security Conference, to be held on February 13-15, is one of the world's most significant annual forums on global security and foreign policy. It brings together heads of state, ministers, lawmakers, military officials and policy experts to discuss pressing international challenges, including war, regional conflicts, NATO cooperation and transatlantic relations. This year's conference comes at a sensitive time for U.S.-European relations. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to lead a sizable American delegation alongside more than 50 members of Congress and senior U.S. political figures. According to the conference chairman Wolfgang Ischinger, transatlantic relations are currently facing a considerable crisis of trust and credibility, making strong U.S. representation particularly significant. For Georgia, returning to the conference after its 2025 absence could signal an attempt to maintain or recalibrate engagement with its Western partners. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Azerbaijan and the United Arab Emirates have taken another step in expanding bilateral ties, this time at the municipal level. Baku and Abu Dhabi have signed a memorandum establishing twinning relations between the two capitals.
Two capitals, two skylines rising from the desert and the Caspian shore. Different geographies, similar ambitions. From the shores of the Caspian Sea to the coast of the Arabian Gulf, Baku and Abu Dhabi are shaping new urban identities at remarkable speed.
Today in Baku, Azerbaijan and the United Arab Emirates strengthened their cooperation, this time at the level of their capitals. Memorandum on twinning relations was signed between the city of Baku and Abu Dhabi, creating a formal framework for closer collaboration. The agreement is expected to open new opportunities in urban development, infrastructure, innovation, cultural exchange and business partnership. The move follows President Ilham Aliyev's recent working visit to UAE, where expanding bilateral ties was high on the agenda. Today's step translates that political dialogue into practical cooperation.
Both cities are expanding rapidly, investing in infrastructure, digital systems and sustainable urban planning. For Baku, diversification and modernization remain central priorities. For Abu Dhabi, smart governance and optimized city management define its model. Now, those experiences are set to intersect.
Baku, this is my first time in Baku and definitely will not be my last. It's a beautiful city. I know the city is growing and similar to the pace and speed of Abu Dhabi, and that's why we are here today to understand how the city is being managed in a very fast and optimized way.
City-to-city partnerships often move faster than national frameworks. This memorandum creates a direct working channel between Baku and Abu Dhabi as both cities continue to manage rapid growth.
The World Defense Show in Riyadh continues to showcase the latest technologies in the defense industry. Many leading companies are presenting their innovations at this global event. Our correspondent Nuray Mustafa, who is in Riyadh, spoke exclusively with the CEO of Foam Technology Company for Industry, a pioneering Saudi manufacturer specializing in advanced aluminum foam solutions for defense and industrial use. Khalid Al Jalajel shared his company's goals and future plans.
To meet, for sure, to meet business partners, for sure, and to see opportunities to introduce our product. Hopefully we can get some interest because it's a global, as you've seen, it's a global community, and hopefully we can reach our goal in this World Defense Show.
Uzbekistan is expanding renewable energy projects in so-called challenging mahallas, with plans to attract $230 million to install small solar power stations aimed at boosting local incomes and improving infrastructure.
Uzbekistan plans to install small solar power plants in 1,000 mahallas as part of a broader program to reduce poverty and stimulate regional development. A mahalla is a local neighborhood community that serves as a traditional form of self-governance and social organization across the country. Under the initiative, each community will receive solar photoelectric stations with a capacity of 300 to 500 kilowatts. The facilities are expected to be transferred to mahallas on preferential 7-year terms, allowing them to generate additional income through electricity production. Funding will come from both domestic and international sources. The Fund for Reconstruction and Development is set to allocate $110 million, while another $120 million is expected from international financial institutions, bringing total investment to around $230 million. Officials say the solar rollout forms part of a wider reforms targeting 37 districts and more than 900 mahallas with difficult socio-economic conditions, alongside measures to improve infrastructure, modernize energy networks and support local entrepreneurship. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan A News.
Afghanistan has announced a complete ban on the import of medicines from Pakistan as tensions between the two neighbors continue to disrupt trade and border movement. The decision comes after a month of border closures that have already affected markets across the country. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
Afghanistan's Ministry of Finance says the import of medicines from Pakistan is now banned at all custom points across the country. In a statement, the ministry spokesperson Abdul Qayyum Nasser said authorities would strictly monitor the borders and prevent the smuggling of medicines and other goods through illegal routes. He warned that legal action would be taken against anyone violating the new order. The ministry has also urged importers to seek alternative routes for medicines and essential goods, saying the government is working to provide a full support and facilitation to traders during the transition. The move follows months of border closures by Pakistan amid rising political and security tensions between the two countries. Key crossings along the Afghan-Pakistan frontier have remained shut, severely affecting trade flows and markets inside Afghanistan. Islamabad has accused Kabul of allowing militant groups to operate from Afghan territory, an allegation Kabul authorities firmly deny. Officials in Kabul say they do not allow anyone to use Afghan soil to threaten other countries and have urged Pakistan to address its own internal security challenges. The ban on Pakistani medicines is the latest sign of the growing strain in relations, with trade, travel and diplomatic exchanges all affected in recent months. Authorities say alternative supply routes are being arranged, but traders warn that prolonged disruptions could push up prices and limit access to essential goods. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss Eastern Mediterranean diplomacy as Erdogan hosts Mitsotakis in Ankara. See you shortly.
I'm Katie Wilson and A News Talks has a brand new look. In this new episode, we sit down with 3 voices, 3 personal stories and 3 perspectives that help us understand the world we live in today.
I was really excited, and at the same time it's a new chapter in my life.
So far the biggest project that I've gotten myself into.
From From academia to real-life experience, A-News Talks goes beyond headlines, focusing on people, ideas and the journeys that shape them.
Not by the role you have, not by the salary you have. That's what I define as a success.
Honest conversations, meaningful dialogue. This is A-News Talks, coming soon.
Welcome back to A-News. Now we focus on a significant moment in Eastern Mediterranean diplomacy. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is hosting Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis in Ankara. This marks another high-level visit in a series of efforts by Ankara and Athens to move beyond decades of rivalry toward cooperation. The two leaders will co-chair the 6th Turkey-Greece High-Level Cooperation Council, a strategic forum aiming to expand bilateral trade from roughly $6.7 billion toward a $10 billion target, deepen cooperation on regional security and NATO priorities, and enhance ties in commerce, culture, education, and migration management. To unpack the prospects and challenges of this evolving rapprochement, we are joined live from Ankara by Bekir İlhan, senior expert at the Turkey Research Foundation. Mr. İlhan, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So first, how would you assess the overall trajectory of Turkey-Greece relations leading up to this meeting? Are we seeing real momentum or just episodic diplomacy?
Yeah, I would say that, Prime Minister Mitsotakis is here in Ankara at the invitation of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And of course, there will be many issues on the table, ranging from culture, migration management, infrastructure, education, and etc. And for sure, there are many problems between Turkey and Greece. They are, I would say, historical problems, long-standing problems like maritime jurisdiction issues, like airspace issues, like the Cyprus issue. These problems are historical problems, and also I do not expect any major developments regarding these problems. You cannot solve anything in a single meeting, but on the other hand, I would say the Turkish-Greek relations have a great potential if taken correctly or if handled correctly, I would say, because Wilden Badis, I would say, Turkey and Greece, although both countries have many problems, but regarding the areas like education, migration management, and infrastructure, or also tourism, trade, just look at these areas. You can increase these relations in these areas, and also I would say the current trade volume between Greece and Turkey is around $6 billion, and both countries set a new target. I would say, the new goal. I would say the new goal is just $10 billion. And of course, like I said, there are many problems, but also there are many opportunities on the table right now.
Mr. İlhan, the High-Level Cooperation Council's agenda spans trade, defense, culture, and migration. Which area do you think holds the most immediate potential for breakthrough cooperation?
I would say the non-military and non-security areas like culture, education, these areas, could be a great starting point, I would say, because security issues or military issues between Turkey and Greece, as I said, these problems, have a very interesting and have a very long-standing historical background. And as I said, you cannot solve these problems in just a single meeting, but the non-military, non-security areas, have a great potential for going forward, I would say, for the positive agenda, I would say. Turkey and Greece, shares, land borders. Both countries shares, coastal borders, and also regarding the tourism, trades, and infrastructure, and any other non-military issues, I would say, have a great potential going forward, I would say. And looking ahead, I would say Greece, of course, there is a great potential, but the Greek foreign policy, I would say, must change at some point, because given the balance of power between Turkey and Greece, I would say there is a huge difference between these two countries. There is no Cold War balance of power anymore. Looking at the Turkish, population, Turkish military power, and Turkish economy, Greece cannot compete with Turkey in the long term, and Greece should not see Turkey as a potential adversary. And by doing so, I would say Greece, has a lot to gain from this cooperation, I would say. But if Greece prefers to keep, keep going in an competitive trajectory, I would say, Greece will not sustain this kind of competition with Turkey, I would say. And as I said, on a win-win situation, on a win-win basis, both countries can gain a lot by cooperation. But as I said, problems are historical and long-standing.
So how much influence do domestic politics in Ankara and Athens have on the pace and scope of rapprochement?
Yeah, looking at the Greece press, I would say the Greece press is a little bit skeptical about Turkey. Of course, right now, as I said, just looking at the balance of power, the weaker side is the Greek side. That's a fact, I would say. As I said, just look at population, military power, and economic power. But on this basis, I would say, Turkey, is standing in a very confident way dealing with Greece. But Greece, on the other hand, should overcome its insecurities regarding Turkey. Of course, Turkey is the powerful side, but I would say, Turkey does not pose any kind of threat to the Greek sovereignty, to the Greek interest, I would say. The problems in Eastern Mediterranean or the Cyprus issue, could be easily solved on a very peaceful and just basis, I would say. But I do not think that in the short term, Greek foreign policy will change, and Greece has its own insecurities regarding Turkey. But I would say, if Greece, leave this position or leave this, attitude towards Turkey, both countries can share many things and can share a beneficial relationship in long term, I would say.
Ms. Ilham, finally, what realistic timeline and benchmarks would you foresee for concrete solutions on the bigger disputes, or at least for sustained de-escalation?
Yeah, in recent times, of course, the tension was very high between Turkey and Greece, especially over the Eastern Mediterranean. And the Greek diplomacy has engaged a lot of anti-Turkey efforts, just engaged with Israel, with Egypt, we are talking about just the recent past 5 years. But looking forward, I would say, honestly, I do not see any, realistic, basis for the ground issues, the bigger issues like Cyprus issue, Eastern Mediterranean issue, or the militarization of Aegean islands, I would say, I do not see an easy solution for them. As I said, we are talking about historical problems, long-standing problems, but for sure, both countries should freeze, at least for now, at least for the foreseeable future, I would say, both countries should freeze these disputes, these issues, and they should focus on positive agenda, I would say. Positive agenda is very important, and these problems, these bigger problems, shouldn't, overshadow the potential opportunities between two countries. As I said, the new trade goal is just $10 billion. Both countries can benefit from these trades, but of course, the problems will not be easily solved in the short term, I would say.
Bekir İlhan, thank you very much for talking to A News. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good day.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for more updates, and thank you for joining us.